Started recording. Okay, so we're working, and I am now going live. And as usual, I believe Facebook is live before it tells you it's live, but we are official now. It's Monday. It's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's right. That's time zones. I know time zones. I'm Eric, and James is with me in the bottom corner right now, and it is your weekly Calamity Jane live stream.
Good
Um,
morning from the West Coast.
yeah, good morning. Have you had your coffee yet?
I'm sipping it right now, actually, because I know I
Excellent.
need some fuel for doing some sketching and drawing.
Excellent. So this week we've got a fun treat. James is going to be starting work on a brand new character. Well, not new. We know who the character is. You're learning about the character for the first time today. She's a pretty important character. You'll see in episodes whenever I write myself into a corner. Her name's Doctor Exposition, and she is exactly what her name sounds. Whenever I get stuck and I can't find a real reason for the plot to move forward, Doctor Exposition will handily show up and and give Calamity the impetus she needs to move forward. And we get strong. We jump out of the gate real strong in the pilot episode, and we already need Doctor Exposition. No, that's actually intentional, but when I was writing the script, I thought, man, I've kind of written myself into a corner here. I need to go and fix something. But then I thought, you know what would be just way funnier is to break the fourth wall a little bit and just have a character come in and move everything forward. So it was like 50% laziness, 50% it made me chuckle when I thought about it, and so that's where Doctor Exposition came from within the show of Calamity Jane. Before I turn over to James, who's going to start working on her a little bit and going into a little bit of detail about her look, I just thought I'd read to you guys the descriptive text. This is what I provided James when I told him that this character was getting added to the script. So this is what's written in our character Bible. Doctor Exposition. No one knows if there's a limit to Doctor Exposition memory or her first name. No one knows where she lives either. She always manages to show up on her puttering scooter when the timing is right. If there's a mystery that's just too complicated to solve, or a problem with no obvious solution, that's Dr. Exposition's call to arms. She shows up, rolling to a stop on her meager means of conveyance, and delivers the key piece of information to save the day. Don't ask her what she wants for dinner, or what her favorite color is, because she'll freeze and never answer. But if knowing the migratory habits of Central American butterflies will overcome some hardship, she'll be there. Answer at the ready. And so that's basically everything that I delivered to you, James, when we started working on this character. So from that point, I'm going to throw it over to you, and why don't we start talking about kind of what went on through your head when you got all of that.
Sure. Let me share my screen so we can see double of you for a second.
Yeah,
But
exciting. I love it.
all right, so we're good there. I'll hide this little menu thing, and we'll go to town a little bit. So, with the description you gave me, it pretty much led to a pretty wide landscape of interpretation. So I started just sketching away, just whatever kind of popped in my head for what a Doctor Exposition would look like. Um, and so I started I kind of just went in any direction. I just kind of felt like, okay, sky's the limit. So I literally went into the sky and into space and made like a space woman type of character.
Mm-hmm.
Then went to an adventurer type, very Kim Possible feeling type of a character here, the giant backpack. And then for some reason in my head, I started kind of pushing her more. And this was really early on, but I started pushing her more towards Asian. And I actually wondered, for some reason in my head, I was thinking about a Korean doctor with this exact type of haircut. And you'll see that, I kind of jumped from space woman to adventure to Asian, and pretty much her design for her hair and stuff kind of stays with me for a little bit there, as I kind of move along, and I go from short to super tall, and then I just completely just eject and then go back to an alien type of thing, go back in the first stage. Let me just throw this. Let me throw this at Eric, and when we have our next discussion, and see if he even notices the weird, gray alien in our lineup. And then I went completely kind of fishbowl with mechanical legs, again, with glasses there, and then the one that I kind of was leaning towards towards the end of the design was this one with the gas mask and the post-apocalyptic future with the kind of the tropey doctor coat on, but also riding a scooter. And if I recall, Eric, was it your idea that you wanted her to be kind of mobile, or was it me? I can't remember where we came up with the idea of her having mobility, but
my memory is I wrote in the script like she shows up on a sputtering scooter, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where these mobility type of things kind of came in towards the end of the design. But you can look from left to right, where I ended up with the most recent version here. But you and I were also discussing stuff and what we ended up liking and what we didn't like towards our finally just making a decision on what we wanted for Dr. Exposition. With all that being said, for the most part, what you and I kind of ended up liking the most was the taller, lankier version of Dr. Exposition, which was these two center characters, and still trying to marry the mobility aspect of it all. And then we finally ended up with this as our design right here.
Right, and it's a blend. You've got the haircut and the Asian themed doctor from before, but then you took the sort of doctor's lab coat from the gas mask character.
Yeah. And then from there on, and then again, like for some reason, if I flash back to the other frame, you'll see, like, I don't know what it is. She always felt, about 25% in the design process, she just felt like an Asian female doctor to me, and we've kind of just stuck with it since, that's what stuck. And so, yeah, we pretty much have her now, like, even though it's not fully designed yet, but she's going to be on a Segway type of a device as she enters into Calamity's world. That'll be her mode of transportation, but this is going to be her design. A basic jack with 3 buttons. I also like to pull from reference with why not go to stock photo, alamestockphoto.com, whatever, and pull some Korean female doctor images to kind of use as reference for when I'm actually going to draw her. And kind of go to town on seeing what I can come up with here for animation purposes.
And so, yeah, and as you can see, like, she's on a Segway now, but I think the original intent was it was more of a Vespa. But I think yeah, and I think even in one sketch, she was even sitting down, and I think the decision was it made her look too small. I mean, her silhouette is really designed to be tall, right? And when she was sitting down in her Vespa, it shrank her. And so I think you suggested that we move to a standing vehicle, and that's, I think, where the Segway came from.
Yeah, I do recall. I wanted to take advantage of, because she is so much taller. I like to have her silhouette kind of shown off without having her transportation kind of distract from it. Like, no matter what, she's always kind of tall, kind of imposing because her scenes. My impression is, and as the writer, Eric, you can confirm or deny, but when she enters the scene, her scenes are pretty quick. So I want to make sure she leaves a lasting impression of having this foreboding type of character that tells you, what will happen or what needs to happen to progress the story forward, and then she's gone. But like, as if you see a snapshot of her shape, and it's so distinct that it stays with you a little bit. There's a little bit of resonance there.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, Dr. Exposition is any scene that she's in will be intentionally brief, because the goal is to just make a joke out of moving Calamity to the next conflict. So it's something we want to try to be really snappy about and have a lot of fun with it. But she's never. I mean, maybe maybe when we run out of ideas and we've told all the stories to tell, then we'll do a special Doctor Exposition episode. But
Yeah, the origins of her.
yeah, exactly.
From childhood, whatever, how she came to be all knowing, all that type of stuff.
Yep. But for the time being, at least, she's definitely just a foil character that we want to get to a punchline nice and quick like.
So I'm actually going in and creating the shape of her head, and just kind of. I'm not completely obsessed with color just yet, but I want to kind of get in the ballpark of her general skin tone and the like. But the main thing is I want to lay in shape, so I'm not going to dwell too much on color. And with the way I've designed this show is everything is all based on shapes. There's no lines. When I animate, I love drawing with lines. I mean, because lines are so expressive. So I kind of gave myself a challenge here by having to rely everything on shapes instead. So that's kind of a different type of a thought process I got to kind of think about as I go. But yeah.
And now, so do you, in terms of when you're working on producing the final key art for her, when you talk about shapes, do you start with just her body shape first, and then you go back and will add the jacket and the stuff on top of that, or?
Well, the intention was I was gonna start with her head first today, but I don't know if you've seen or not, but Adobe's program just crashed on me because I did shape, so that was fun. But yeah, my intention today was to actually start with her head shape first. I guess from a design perspective, it's the most interesting thing I like to work on anyway. It kind of helps me establish her identity. So I was going to do that. Her body is pretty much a long straight line. So I'm not as concerned about her body as I am just with her head. So let's see if I can retain anything. Of course, I lost all that. The whole shape is gone, but I can redraw it again.
Everybody saw it here first. You can be sure that that James did do it, though. It did exist at one point.
There is proof. Yes, all that time I spent finding a color, all that stuff, out the door. So at this point, I'm just going to draw and not care about that. So I get the shape first.
Now you use the first pose that you're doing here. You'll use that. You'll take the shapes that you're developing here, and you'll use those for all of her other poses.
Yeah. So, in animation, we typically want to use. This is what I would consider a 3/4 head view and pose. Actually, I guess her whole body's kind of set up the same way. In animation, this is usually the most effective way of taking advantage of scenes and recycling different elements for telling a story, because you could use a front pose for a lot of stuff, but when you want to walk or you want to have them kind of do something with silhouette, it's usually better to use a 3/4 pose.
Is there? I'm curious because it's something I've heard before. I mean, you see that on The Simpsons all the time. They're always drawn in basically 3/4 perspective.
Yeah.
What is the reason for that, if there is one, or if it's just convention?
It's convention, and also you just get the most mileage of it. You're able to do certain types of poses, to emote certain ways and convey different types of feelings with 3/4 pose as opposed to a front view, and definitely not a back view. But a front view, everything's kind of the face gets flattened because you're looking straight at the camera, and then there's also this weird thing with symmetry because everything's perfectly symmetrical, but in nature we have asymmetry everywhere, and I think we humans kind of pick up on that too. So when you're having a 3/4 pose, it's almost like a natural state. This is all my opinion. I'm talking artsy fartsy stuff.
No, it's super interesting.
But we're already predisposed to recognize asymmetry in nature anyway. So 3/4 poses always lend itself to being just, even if they are perfectly symmetrical on the left and right sides in a front pose, on a 3/4 pose, there's no choice. You have to, one side's fading off into perspective, the other side's not, you know, or the camera. So all that kind of lends itself to helping for production as we go forward.
Okay.
Yeah, but as far as if Flash doesn't crash on me, so far so good. I'll just keep building her face here. What I'm doing is everything I'm building is with the shape tool here, like just using not using the stroke color at all, but using the fill color to do all my work for the most part here. So I have a face kind of laid out. I'm pretty happy with that for right now. If I use my outline, I can see how it's pretty close to the contour of the sketch. I don't have to be married to the sketch completely, but I do like to kind of follow it and then kind of fine tune stuff later as needed. But for the most part, we've got her head. I'm going to go in with her hair next, I think, and just kind of start laying that in. With her hair, it's going to be pretty standard. What's the name of the character on? Her hair to me was inspired, and I should have had a sketch for this for fun today. But her hair was inspired from the Incredibles doctor scientist lady. What's her name?
Right.
I can't remember her name, but
yeah.
Anyways,
I know which character you're talking about. I don't know that I recall her name off the top of my head either.
Yeah, I love that character. I love her design, and I'm just blatantly just trying to rip her off a little bit since we needed a doctor, and I kind of fell into that. Oh, well, here's a doctor. I kind of did that, but I don't care. I mean, I'm kind of
Edna Mode as her name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's rad. I think she's totally rad.
Yeah, Brad Bird did the voice of her actually.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's him. So yeah, I haven't seen The Incredibles in a long time, and I never got around to seeing Incredibles 2. I'm gonna be totally honest here. I'm not a huge Pixar fan. I used to really like Pixar, but I don't know. I guess I grew out of it. Not I don't want to sound like I changed. I guess what my interests were changed, and I'm just not that as into Pixar cartoons anymore. I guess what I'm looking for is a little bit different. I guess I don't know.
Is there? Are you sensing like what is it about Pixar movies that kind of do you feel like you grew out of them or something as an adult?
No, I don't think that that's the case. I mean, because I know plenty of people my age and older who still love Pixar. I don't think it's a maturity thing, right? I think it's I think what I was looking for changed. I guess I will be honest. I feel like all of their movies, there's a sameness to them. And
as far as story's concerned and stuff like that?
Definitely the story, because they always use the once upon a time and every day until one day, and because of that, until finally and every day since then, that sort of 7-line story concept that basically is what they base all of their plots on. And I think that kind of focus on simplicity, maybe it's because I know a little bit about how the sausage is made. It becomes really obvious to me that that's going on. But I do find the story somewhat predictable. I mean, like, a lot predictable, I'll be honest. But that in and of itself isn't really the issue. There's plenty of movies that the plot lines are predictable, and I still really like them. I think part of it is they are, to me, a victim of their own success. They produced so much good animation. Everybody just started doing Pixar-style animation, and I just really don't want to watch Pixar-style animation anymore. I mean, that you've really, like, you're really changing the game when Blizzard. There, in my opinion, I find Overwatch to just be a Pixar also ran, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what their actual creative conversations were, but to me, I find it indistinguishable from any Pixar cartoon that's out there, quite frankly. And and to a lesser extent, like Big Hero 6, and I know Big Hero 6 wasn't Pixar, but in my opinion, all of Disney's 3D cartoons at this point are just some variation of Pixar's art aesthetic and animation aesthetic. right? Like I feel like to a large extent, the uniqueness of Disney animation is has been lost somewhat in favor of really trying to capitalize on Pixar's art style. So
Yeah,
that's my rant for the
uh,
moment.
yeah, I get the rant. I think what they're, and again, Disney's a company, so they got to make money.
Oh
And
yeah, 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 yeah. No judgment on any of this, right? Like it's not it's not a commentary on. It's just like what my preferences have become is just drifted away from that.
mhm.
And then I've never been a huge Disney fan in general. What I like from cartoons has always been more Hanna Barbera and Warner Brothers. Hence, Calamity Jane being largely, all of our homages to animation are to Looney Tunes and Hanna Barbera rather than Disney based
Yeah,
cartoons.
yeah, that's where we kind of started from.
So come by it honestly, at least. At least I'm not like I'm changing my mind.
I think back to, I mean, when you're referring to Blizzard and how their games kind of have that kind of a quality picture. I haven't played Overwatch, so I have
Yeah, I mean specifically
no.
Overwatch. Like I still feel like things like World of Warcraft and League of Legends. No. Blizzard is not League of Legends. There is oh, what is their MOBA called? I don't remember what their MOBA is called. League of Legends is obviously Riot, and Dota 2 is Valve.
Mhm.
Storm. Heroes of the Storm. That's their Dota clone. Um, and that all has its own unique art style. I find Diablo has a very unique art style. It's just Overwatch that I feel drifted really, really heavily into the Pixar territory.
I think what happened there, especially with Blizzard, they kind of they have their proximity to being somewhat close by Warner Brothers and Disney Studios. With animation having its cycles where people have their project or their movie that they're on, and they finish it up and they move on to the next project. A lot of those animators that were trained at Disney or Pixar, up north, they get their next gig, and Blizzard's looking for people for their games, and then they inherit some of those people that are in between film, and then they just end up staying game down, in the industry for games instead. That's I suspect that's what's happening.
It wouldn't surprise me. I having spent many many years in the games industry, it's definitely something that happens for both good and bad, right? Like you find an art style or a design concept that works really well, and then you start seeing it move over into other game genres or companies. But it you got to be careful about that stuff, in my opinion. But I think for the most part, Blizzard's done a pretty good job of keeping their art style unique. My beef is only with Overwatch being too Pixar-y.
Hmm. Wow, interesting. Yeah, I'm just not into those games, so I haven't really. Yeah, I haven't played. Did you actually play Overwatch, or
I
were
did play
you?
Overwatch. I could never get into it because I didn't have people to regularly play with, and playing with strangers in a team-based first-person shooter is a waste of everybody's time.
Hmm.
And I don't know that many people who were that into it. I thought the concept was good. I didn't really spend a lot of time. I didn't spend enough time with the game to really get a sense of how good the level design was, right? The map design was.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the mechanics were perfectly perfectly entertaining. I thought the balance seemed fine from what I saw. I never got into it because I just didn't have people to play with. And you
Mm-hmm.
can play it alone, but it's not. It just didn't feel. It clearly wasn't designed to be played by a solo player. In my opinion. I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah. And I think that they're doing like I think Overwatch they're expanding that franchise and they're either doing non-interactive cartoons or they're doing like new games set in the Overwatch universe but that aren't team-based first-person shooters. It's been a huge hit for them and again I don't ever begrudge anybody's success so that's great. It's never been a property for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, wow, it's amazing how quickly she starts coming along. I mean, you can already start getting a sense of her silhouette just in like the 5 minutes we've been talking. At least of her, of her head.
Yeah, that's what happens when you start geeking out on games. I just kind of start trucking.
Just
I mean,
get in a groove.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah, she's coming along again. Like it helps when I mean, she's been in process now for a while. So, I mean, as far as us discussing her, so she's kind of in my headspace anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of draw her from memory a little bit because I mean, we've been kind of designing her like what? How long? I know I've been meeting off and on, well, pretty much weekly for the past X amount of years, and she comes up in conversations a lot. So she kind of lives as a character in my head. So
Sure.
like an old friend. So I'm just drawing an old friend sort of at this point. She's not brand new anymore. We went through that process, a couple of years ago, and now
Yeah.
I'm just kind of bringing her to life for us to
I
look
think
at now.
it's interesting in this episode. She is the newest character. I think she was the last character that was added. But yeah, even Doctor Exposition has been around for a bit now. I mean, this is just as it's something that we work on in our spare time when we can find the hours to do it. So this is really definitely a passion project for me. I assume for you, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you're not waiting for that paycheck.
It's definitely a passion project for me as well.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, in any case, I guess for me, from like outside of, and this is just a tangent at this point, outside of Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera, the types of cartoons I like have always been just, I don't know, I like adult cartoons a lot. Even if the animation isn't great. Like, no one is going to say South Park has the most cutting edge, mind-boggling $10 million for 3 frames of animation budget or something like that. But I've always found like a cartoon like South Park or BoJack Horseman or any of these just kind of serialized cartoons, they do a really great job of taking their animation and applying it to their adult themes in a way that really enhances the topics they're talking about. I mean, BoJack Horseman in particular. I mean, every character is in that show is basically an allegory for something else. I mean, I have a thought that like BoJack in particular, I think is a really good example, right? Like, he's a stud who's past his prime and he's been put out to pasture, right? BoJack as a character has basically been living on the residuals of his '90s sitcom for most of his life, right? He's a womanizer. He's a drunk. He doesn't really serve a major purpose anymore. And I get that sense, that's the reason why he ended up being a horse, right? And you can do that kind of analysis on pretty much any character in the show, and the animal that they represent, if they are represented by an animal, is in my opinion clearly deliberate, and that's really awesome when animation does stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a fun era to see what animation's been doing. I think Simpsons definitely helped herald in the more adult take on cartoons that they could be for grown-ups. And although even though anime has been doing it forever over in Japan,
yeah,
I think when we started doing it over here, the Simpsons were huge in helping to kind of push that to more mainstream acceptance. Because before that, we had like heavy metal, for example, like these weird offshoot VHS things you have to go get at these weird places called like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video.
What's that?
What are those things? But now it's just it's commonplace now. You can kind of find whatever flavor you're looking for on TV. It's great.
Yeah.
So it kind of opens it up for acceptance for all kinds of different.
Well, I'm speaking to adult focused cartoons. Pendleton Ward, the guy who does Adventure Time, he's got a new show on Netflix called Midnight Gospel.
Okay.
It's maybe I haven't decided if I liked it or not, but it is incredibly interesting. So he basically records a podcast with an interviewee, and part of the conceit though is he has the interviewee. I don't know how they do it. It's really curious, but basically the cartoon is animated like it's a story.
Okay.
It's a guy who goes into a virtual reality simulator and interviews a subject of someone who lives in an alternate reality of his. And they talk about something that's completely unrelated to the events, or at least superficially unrelated to the events of what's going on in the storyline. and it sounds like a really a genuine interview, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. So like it's hard to explain, but the best way is the first episode. He has Drew Pinsky on, that Dr. Drew from that famous psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, and they talk about psychedelic drugs and drugs in general, and drugs, are they good, are they bad, what do they mean, etc., etc. And while they're having this conversation, this candid conversation, the premise of the episode is they are fleeing from a zombie apocalypse.
Hmm.
And for the most part, most of the dialogue is them just talking about the nature of drugs and what they mean. But then, like, when they need to, if a zombie is attacking, Dr. Drew will say things like, "Oh, he bit my arm off." So he's definitely aware, like, the interviewees are definitely aware of what the plot of the episode is. But
Mm-hmm.
whether they do that incidentally in the middle of an interview, or if, like, they do the interview, then the writers and the animators come up with a show, and then they just grab incidental recording to fill out any other moments, I don't know. But it's really interesting, and I will definitely keep watching it, but I don't know if I like it. I don't know. I don't know that makes any sense.
This is on
Yeah,
Netflix.
it's on Netflix. It's really interesting. I've never really watched a cartoon quite like it before. I'm only 2 episodes in, so who knows? But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. It's really good work.
I may have to. Well, I'll wait for you to suffer a little bit more and see if it's worth it for
Okay,
me
it's
to.
not total suffering because I want to watch another episode. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of a, like, I watch BoJack Horseman. I'm like, I love this show.
Uh-huh.
Period. Whereas the Midnight Gospel is like, this is a very interesting show, but I don't know if it's
You
something I
just
will
don't like
watch
it,
again. Right? Like,
yeah.
I've watched BoJack Horseman twice at this point. So, but so we're running up on about 30 minutes. I'm happy to sit for another 10 or so minutes if you're comfortable. I'd love to see get her other eye in, and then maybe once the other eye is in, we can take a step back and take a look at your progress, and then I'll let you
Yeah.
work without me talking your ear off.
Well, you know what I'm thinking is since we are bumping up to the half hour mark, yeah, I'll put that other eye in, and then we'll kind of bookmark this, and maybe we'll pick this up at another episode.
Yeah, that
That's what I
sounds
was thinking.
good. Yeah, we can keep working on it, and we can see how Doctor Exposition evolves. And to be clear for all of our viewers, this is literally James's process. This isn't We're not manufacturing anything for the sake of this stream. Like, this is how you create your characters, correct?
Yeah, this is pretty much how well, for Calamity Jane especially, this is how I'm doing it. I like to build with shapes. I don't know if just to kind of go back over it, I build with shapes first because I have no choice because there's no lines in the show for the characters. And then I start shaping them like kind of like flat digital clay in a way. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of make a shape here, and then you kind of just use your keyboard and you can kind of shape them with a couple of different commands and kind of shape them to what you want to kind of build the character out. Um,
It's very
but
cool.
yeah, I mean, we're kind of at a good spot here, I think. We've got
Yeah,
two eyes
she's missing a
there.
nose and a mouth, but you can already see in about, I think, the 20 minutes that we were talking, Doctor Exposition turning from a rough sketch into a fully fleshed out character. So that's pretty
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah, this is a good spot to hold off on for bookmarking, and then yeah, we'll revisit this later.
Cool. All right.
Good to you?
Well, this is super fun. Thanks, James. And just a reminder, all of our viewers, if you want to learn more about Calamity Jane and subscribe to our Patreon site, just head on over to calamityjane.rocks, and that will forward you over to Patreon, or just go to patreon.com, Calamity Jane Adventure Hour, and you can find us there. Either way, we have weekly posts. Last week's post, I talk about my philosophy on sound design because I'm in the midst of doing all of the sound design and that kind of stuff in it. And we do weekly posts on Patreon, and we do a weekly stream on Mondays, which is what you're watching right now. And you can also find our stream on YouTube. And in fact, actually, starting next week, we're actually going to live stream through YouTube and then upload the video to Facebook. So if you want to watch us live starting next week, hop over to YouTube. We will have information on our Facebook page and on the Patreon site, so you won't have any problems identifying where to go. And that's about it. Any parting thoughts from you, James?
no parting thoughts for now. We'll just see the next episode, and we'll find something else to talk you guys' ears off with.
Excellent. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody. It was a blast as always. Until next week.
See
Bye.
you guys.